Welcome to the Your Brilliant Difference podcast. This is Finka. I am so delighted that you are here with me today. We are on episode 155. And today we're going to continue our conversation on what I like to call the influence stack. And so if you haven't yet tuned in, check out episode 154, where we talked about what influence is, what are the challenges you face when you're trying to influence someone. And I gave an overview of the 5 elements that are included in the influence stack framework. Where we're going to go today is we're going to do a double click on the influence stack framework. And I'm going to go through each of the 5 elements with you with an example as well, so you can kind of see how it is put into action. Now, this episode's really for those of you who have these brilliant ideas, but you are struggling to convey them to your audience, your stakeholders, maybe even to senior leaders in your organization. Oftentimes you either can be overwhelming them with information. You might not even be aware that you're doing it. And oftentimes, you both walk away with the problem remaining unsolved. No one's really clear on what needs to happen next. And there's none of that inspiration and that real momentum and movement forward. So this episode, I really want to talk about the importance of each of these 5 elements so you can be more confident when you are communicating your ideas. You can be that positive change maker in your organization or in your business, and you can leave a meaningful impact and be recognized as the leader you are. All you need to do is overcome some of these communication gaps and obstacles that are facing your way, and so you can be rewarded and recognized for those. Now, before we dive into those 5 influence stack framework elements, what I wanted to also point you to is to our website. If you head on over to finkainc.com/stack, STACK, you can download a summary of the framework and a way for you to continue applying this for your next big meeting. Perhaps you're presenting in front of a bigger audience, or you're even pitching a proposal to a prospective client. This influence framework will have you put yourself in the seat of your customer, your audience, your stakeholder, so you can see the world from their point of view, but also inspire that change. Be more confident and be seen as a leader in your field or in your zone of expertise. So let's dive in. So the first element, actually, let me give you an overview of the elements. So the first element is stakeholders. So that's the first element on the influence stack. And so we're going to just be stacking them one on top of each other. The first is the stakeholder. The second is the shift. The third is the structure of what you're looking to influence. The fourth is the story. What's the big story you're here to tell? And the fifth element is your style. So let's talk about the stakeholder. So the stakeholder is all about putting ourselves in the shoes of our stakeholder. Now, I don't know about you, but often I'm really excited and can't wait to talk about my big idea or recommendation or solution. And I'm already, I've gone from A to Z really, really quickly. And I can't wait to talk about Z. We are here. Let's talk about this big thing that I want to be sharing with you. But oftentimes we can lose sight of our stakeholders because we're so invested, so enamored with our idea that they're not yet there. We've been knee deep in it. We've been exploring it. We've been discovering it. We finally figured it out, and we can't wait to talk about it from the rooftops. And that's a great place to be. But we've got to rewind. We've got to go backwards, and we got to start from the beginning. And when we start from the beginning, we let go of ourselves in that beginning. We let go of the problem. We let go of the solution and the way forward, and we step back into how the world sees, how our stakeholders see the world from their eyes. Now, I had a situation where I was, presenting, and these were 2 different scenarios, and I'll walk through these 2 different scenarios as we explore this topic around the influence stack in this episode. We'll call them Dave and Doug. And I was meeting with Dave. And I was so excited about my proposal. I was proposing a learning development program, and I was just really excited about talking about this solution. And that's where I went right into that conversation. And I didn't really consider Dave, unfortunately. And Dave kind of like was in that meeting with me, and he was interested in, especially in the beginning. And then I just noticed him kind of sitting back in his seat. And then that was that. And he just kind of kept nodding. And so I was getting the physical gestures that he was engaged. But what I didn't get were the verbal ones. He wasn't asking me questions. He wasn't even objecting to anything I was saying. He was just really nodding and, yeah, it's great. That's great. And that's a telltale sign that we've lost our audience already. Those are good ones we feel from our perspective when we're pitching or presenting or proposing something. But from their perspective, the nods could just be this, yep, I'm with you, because they have nothing else to say. If they're not giving you feedback or offering anything or asking you questions, it is a telltale sign. And I was just so invested in the outcome. I was so invested in, and again, it was for the benefit of him and his team and what we were doing as an organization, but I didn't have him in mind. Now let's go to Doug. Now, Doug's story is a little bit different. With Doug's story, I really stepped into how Doug was seeing the world and what was important to him, what his goals were, what was he striving to achieve, looking at his strategic objectives in the organization. And it really got me to see the world from his point of view. So I didn't start from the solution. I wasn't even invested in the solution. What I was invested more in was what was important to Doug. All right. And so that's this really important part of this, that, as we have these great ideas, and yes, the solution and the way forward, that's fantastic. But where we will lose our people is when we don't go backwards. So we got to rewind and go back into how they see the world, or even in their present day. It's not even going backwards. We've kind of gone through the journey of, from problem to exploring options to facing our own obstacles to thinking about a way forward and coming up with an end resolution. So we've already gone through that process. They haven't. And we don't have to go backwards to where we started back, 6 months ago or a year from now when the journey started. Where we have to go is where our stakeholder is today in this moment. What's important to them? What do they know? How do they feel? What do they need to believe? What do they need to do? What are they doing today? And what needs to shift and change? All right. And so those are the questions that we want to be asking. So the first set of questions is looking at it from their current state. Where are they? What do they know? What do they know about the situation? What do they believe? What do they believe is the problem? What do they believe that are the obstacles? What do they believe is the way forward, the solution? And what are they doing right now in order to move things forward? And then we think about the future state. Now, after our conversation or after we get them to say yes to the solution or proposal we have put forward, what's the after state? What will they know as a result of that? What will they believe? And what will they do? What would be different now that they have implemented, put into action this proposed solution or action you've put forward for them? Okay, so there we go. So the first element on the influence stack is our stakeholder. Now, the next element is the shift. Now, often, I don't know about you, but I know for me, where I can get stuck is I need to prove. And I get all the facts and the statistics and all this data to support why this is a good solution and why we need to choose this option as a way forward. And so there's a particular action you're looking to influence someone with. There's this, proof that we need to bring to the table. And it's not to say that the proof isn't important. Proof and facts and data and statistics are important to support our argument or our business case. What's even more important, which especially in the business world, especially in our corporate space, we lose sight of and we do not include in the conversation, we do not even include it in our thinking, is what is the emotional state? And so this is the shift. It's not a shift from before and after of things we're going to do and things we want to be thinking. And we got to get all this proof. We got to think we're emotional beings. We make decisions based on our emotions, and then we rationalize them through data, through statistics, through facts. We get a logical conclusion on why this is a good decision and why we need to move forward with that. but there is an underlying emotion that is happening that is driving the behavior that we're going to take, the action we're going to take. And then we start looking around the world and we start looking for evidence. We start looking for why and giving ourselves a rational argument on why this is a good decision to move forward in this way. And so that's the second element on the influence stack, is seeking and uncovering the emotional state. And so just like with our stakeholders, we're going to go back to our stakeholder and we're going to identify what is the emotional state they are feeling. What is that, I will say, negative state? What is the painful state that they are experiencing? Are they frustrated? Are they annoyed? Are they critical? Are they pessimistic? What is that emotional state? And when they take on your solution, your idea, when you influence them to move forward, what's the emotional state they're going to be moving towards? Are they going to be more optimistic? Are they going to feel positive? Are they going to be excited? Are they going to be engaged, eager? Are they going to be inspired? Are they going to be empowered? And so when I go back to that example with Dave, I didn't do any of that emotional stating at all. I didn't even name what the shift was going to be, or that there was an emotional shift. I went right into the data. I went right into the facts, the figures on why it was important. And that was another reason why Dave was not engaged. He gave me the head nods, but his heart wasn't in with me. And that's what we want to be doing. There is the head to head connection, but we want to make the heart to heart connection. And that's what the shift is all about. Now, with Doug's scenario, I knew that he was frustrated with his current predicament. I knew, and it wasn't, I knew that, but I acknowledged it. And I also acknowledged that he wanted to be more optimistic. He wanted to get from frustration to eagerness to excitement on the problem he was experiencing with where his organization and his team was at. And again, I was proposing a professional development program. So both of them were getting different programs, but in the same sphere, some form of development, skill development. But Dave's didn't land and Doug's did. And hopefully you're seeing the difference of why Dave's didn't and why Doug's did. So now let's talk about the third element in the influence stack, and that is the structure. So as an ideas person, as someone who likes to think outside of the box, putting myself in a box and giving myself structure and all of that, I used to resist it. I used to say, no, I don't, I remember also being in the bank and one of our leaders would say, freedom in the frame. And I'm like, how can you have any freedom in a frame? That doesn't feel free at all. And then I learned the hard way. Creativity does need a structure. It does need boundaries. If we don't, nothing gets made. I think about a vine trying to grow up a wall. It doesn't just like grow up the wall. It has a trellis. It kind of climbs on this trellis. So it does have even a structure, something that is wild as a vine in order to climb it. It's leaning up against a wall. I remember when I was writing my book, I thought I can just write. And then I wrote 30,000 words and it went nowhere because I was going nowhere because I had no structure. And so your proposal, your presentation, your ability to influence someone needs structure. So that's what I want you to think about. Now, when it comes to structure, we want to be thinking about these elements. And so there are 5 elements I want you to be thinking about. So the first is the problem. What's the specific problem you are looking to solve? So again, we're going to go back to our stakeholder, how this problem is important to them. You're going to reflect on the emotional state that we're going from and to. So there's this problem. How are they feeling in this problem? Are they feeling annoyed, angered, frustrated, like just debilitated? What is that feeling that they're feeling? But also specifically create a problem statement. So this is part of your structure. The second element in this flow of identifying the structure is name your solution. What's the solution and what's the transformational impact of that solution? So in my case, I was proposing a professional development program. For both cases, I was very clear with the Doug presentation that the transformation is his leaders would be more confident. They'd be clear communicators. They'd be presenting as better leaders and influencers in the workplace. And so there's that. There's the first problem, and now we've got a solution. But the solution was a professional development program, but there was a transformational impact that solution has. So that's the second element. The third element is that we want to talk about the consequences and the rewards. What is the consequence of not taking action? What's going to happen if we just leave things as status quo? And just so you know, that's where most things end. It's not like they went with another solution or they went with another offering or a competitor. Most proposals, programs, ideas, when we're trying to influence, end up with status quo. People don't want to change. It feels too hard. We don't know if it's work. Comfort of knowing that this is working may not be the best, but at least I know, the devil you know is better than one that you don't. That's kind of what happens. We lose it to status quo. So we got to get really explicit. What are the consequences of not taking action and not moving forward and solving this problem and choosing your solution as a way forward? And then we've got to talk about the reward. What's on the flip side? When they say yes, what's the upswing? What are all the positives? What are they going to gain? What are they going to receive? What is the world going to be like for them, their team, their organization, because they said yes? And now the fourth element. The fourth element is really painting a picture of what's the way forward. So you've got your problem, your solution alongside the transformation. You've talked about the consequences and the rewards. And now we're going to paint a picture. Now, in order to take action here and to solve this problem, we've got to do 1, 2, and 3. All right. So don't go more than 3. We don't want to overwhelm. It might only be one thing, maybe 2, but up to 3 things that they need to be doing. Now, in my case, when I was proposing my professional development program with Doug, I suggested that we run a focus group just to make sure that we've aligned the problem and the solution to be accurate and that would be important to the field. The second was that we would then run a beta with the leaders. So the leaders would understand what experience their direct reports would be going through, and then they can talk to it and coach to it. So that would be plan number 2. And then number 3 was let's launch, let's move forward and implement this professional development program into the organization, into their team. Okay, so step 1, 2, 3. And ultimately, the last piece is the call to action. What did I want Dave and Doug to do? Both of them, I wanted them to approve my proposal for this professional development program. Dave said yes sounds great in the meeting, but nothing happened afterwards at all. I heard crickets. Actually got feedback from some colleagues who said he didn't know where this was coming from and why we were proposing this and why others weren't part of it. So there was a ton of learning lessons for me on that. So I don't want you to have that. I don't want you to experience that. Maybe you've had something similar. What I want you to experience, what I experienced with Doug, where when I had a clear call to action, I knew I wanted him to give me the go-ahead, that this program would help him solve his problem and help elevate the skill set of his team, help elevate the talent pool table that he had to choose from for leadership in his organization. And it was a success. Doug said yes. Dave said yes, and then no. So that's how that one landed. So again, structure. Structure is your friend, even for you creatives and innovators. That's the way we get our ideas out in the world. We need to put some structure to them. Now, the fourth element is the story. We remember things. You think about how traditions, how ideas, how our culture, how things have been passed down through the ages has been through story. And stories stick. Stories is how we're wired. Stories is what we remember. Stories is what bring that problem, the solution, your way forward. It brings that emotional connection that you are wanting to get your audience, your stakeholder experience in this moment. You want them to experience it in this moment because right now they might not be feeling it as you're doing the presentation. But how do you get them to feel it in this moment so that they can identify with what you're talking to them about? And that is through story. Now, the stories can be about the problem stories. It could be client impact stories. It could be your personal story. The whole idea here with the story is to get your stakeholder to see themselves or identify aspects of what you're telling in the story with themselves, or they're understanding that there's some resonance and connection that they have. Now, when I was in that presentation with Dave, I didn't do any stories, so there was nothing to create an emotional resonance or stickiness in our dialogue. With Doug, I did have stories. I talked to him about employees and their experience and why they were leaving this particular department, so he can understand and connect with that. I gave him stories about why people stay and what they love about the department. He's like, oh, he can connect with that, all the things that he loved about it. And I also gave him stories about what people were, why they were hesitating, jumping into this area and this department of his organization. And so he can see the world from their eyes, but also connect with what that emotional experience is like. Now, he may not have had an exact experience. He was probably very excited to join this area and this department, but there are other areas in his life or in his career that he also can relate to that experience. So the whole point of the story is, how can we get our audience to connect with the story that you're telling with something that they can identify with? Might be the details might not be the same, so we don't have to really worry about the details, that they're connecting with the exact details, but the emotional experience of the story that you're sharing. So again, that's why it's important to name the shift. So story, bringing that element of story into your proposal, your presentation, into the conversations that you are having, that you're looking to shift people from doing one thing to shifting them to do something else that is in their best interest, that it'll elevate who they're going to be, what they're going to have, and what they're going to be able to do. So again, I want to reiterate, influence is not about being sticky and icky, not sticky, icky, and that you're pushing people to do something that they don't want to do. We are always coming from this place of integrity, that we're looking to influence them because we see that they're stuck. We see that they're getting in their own way, and we've got this solution, this way forward for them, that if they could consider it, if they could feel it, if they can understand and resonate with it, and give them a clear plan forward, that they can say, oh yeah, I really want that. I really want to do that because I want more of that. And that's the essence and spirit we're coming from. And then finally, the fifth element of your influence stack, and that is style. Now, that is your style. We call it your brilliant difference. It's this aspect of you, this brilliance that you bring, that's here to make a difference, that is here to add value, make impact. Now, your brilliant difference is based on a value triangle. The first is your brilliant difference describes who you are. The second is it's the value you bring. And the third is it's who others get to be in that conversation, in that engagement. And we're always showing up, being, becoming, and adding more value through our brilliant difference. Now, as I was going through my examples with Dave and Doug, for both of them, the style I wanted to bring was inspiring ideas. I wanted to give them idea that inspired them to action. Now, my brilliant difference is inspiring ideas. So I'm all full of ideas. I'm always looking to, what's the way forward? We're stuck here. Okay, how about this? Let's try that. Let's try this. And for both Dave and Doug, I was doing my darndest to bring my brilliant difference, inspiring ideas. What went wrong for my Dave proposal, my Dave presentation, and wanting to influence Dave was I was so enamored in the solution. And I will say my ego was there. I wanted him to say yes. So I felt validated. I felt approved of. I was so invested. When we bring our brilliant difference, it's about them. It's about who they're going to be, who they're going to become. Yes, it's who you are. It is the value you bring. That's why we don't just get stuck in who you are. It's the value you bring, but it's also who they get to be. Who Doug got to be after my presentation and when he said yes is someone who brings inspiring ideas to his leadership team and to his employees and to his organization. And so that's the ripple effect, the trickle down effect of what happens when you bring your brilliant difference. It's not about you and only you. Yes, it's in you. It's your special gift. It's your secret sauce. and your superpower, but it's this thing that helps you deliver the value and impact that you're here to deliver. And then again, we get our ego out the door and it stays at the door. So it doesn't intervene and interfere in our success and our impact because we're so invested and interested in our stakeholder, their problems, not our solution and our big, bold ideas, but more so who they will become and what they will have and what they'll be able to do because they embodied and took on your brilliant difference. And in my case, it was Doug saying yes, Doug saying, this is a great, inspiring idea and moving forward on it. So he got to have a sliver of my brilliant difference in that conversation and in that engagement. So there you have it. Now, I want you to head on over again to finkainc.com/stack so you can download the influence stack, stakeholder, shift, structure, story, style. So you don't forget this, that this stays with you, whether you're making a proposal to a client, you're preparing for a presentation in front of an audience, or you're presenting to your steering committee, your leadership team, and you want them to move forward on an idea, or you need resources, you need more time, you need more money, you need more people on your project. Use the influence stack so you can stay in their mindset, the stakeholder. You can connect to that emotional shift that they're going to be going through. You can create a structure so you don't overwhelm and overload your audience. You tell a story so you make your proposal, your idea sticky. And finally, you bring your style, your brilliant difference. This is what it's all about. You got to bring this part of you that's here to make a meaningful difference and impact. So again, thank you so much for tuning in on this episode. Again, I'd love to hear from you. What is it that is top of mind for you? Where are you struggling? What is it that you would love for me to talk about here on the Your Brilliant Difference podcast? Feel free to email me at finkainc.com, or in the show notes, we have a survey where you get to chime in and tell me what you're thinking, what's top of mind, and I will be sure to address it here on the podcast. Thank you again for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time. Bye for now.